Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we'll be looking at the REX Weather Force application and we'll be drawing direct side-by-side comparisons between the Weather Force weather injection and the default live weather within Microsoft Flight Simulator. That way you should be able to compare the two weather injection methods and hopefully decide for yourself whether or not Weather Force is in fact worth purchasing. I do hope you find the video useful. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. But now let's jump into the Weather Force application and begin the video. So first of all, starting with the application itself, I have to say I've had many problems with the application actually. I read the manual provided by REX before installing the product. I installed the product exactly as they recommended and I'm still having multiple issues. Firstly, when I load up the product, every time I load it up I'm asked to register, even though I've done that multiple times now. And then when I load into the product, sometimes it loads up instantly, other times it has a long load time. And then as you'll see in this brief clip, sometimes the UI works and sometimes it doesn't. Once you enter your details, you get these prompts that come up as a help when you first open up the app, and once again they come up every time I open up the app. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not. You'll see on this particular occasion I don't have any dynamic weather scenarios available. And if I try and search for a particular METAR, the product will take a significant amount of time to try and search. And then ultimately it won't actually find any METAR data for Southampton. We'll try Heathrow just in case Southampton isn't currently available. And once again, nothing coming up. If we try and add in a favourite airport, you can see that that function does work. However, sometimes we have to click multiple times on a particular airport before we can actually add it. In this particular demonstration, I decided we'd try now to search by parameters for some weather. And that did actually seem to kick the app into gear. We do now have weather options available. So I tried again searching for Heathrow. And this time we now have weather information for Heathrow. Trying Southampton now, and sure enough we have options for weather stations in and around Southampton. So it may be that the app takes some time to load up with all the weather data that it requires, but it certainly takes a long time to load. I'm not sure whether it is a bug or just a loading issue, but it's certainly far from ideal, with the examples I just showed you taking anywhere between 9 and 23 seconds to load. We'll come back to live weather now and we'll start up the sim, and then we'll go into the sim and we'll inject the weather exactly as the manual states. So here we are in the sim now. I've just loaded up my flight plan route. We'll go to flight conditions, we'll set live initially for the time, and then we'll set clear skies as required from the Weather Force manual. We'll click fly, wait for the sim to load in. So we have clear skies, the sim is loaded up. Click on live weather and we'll click start synthesis. So we started the application, we set our flight plan, we set clear skies, we've clicked fly and we now click start weather synthesis. The application will take a little while to load in the active weather. As you can see, it's still currently loading. It's now injecting the weather. And I'll leave it running in real time just so you can get a feel for how long it takes to inject. It's now completed. It reckons the temperature is 4 degrees Celsius, QNH is 1013, and the wind is 4 knots from the west-northwest. As you can see, the temperature according to the King Air is still 15 degrees Celsius, so the temperature hasn't actually changed with the weather injection. The altimeter we would expect to see 2992, and the weather forecast does say more than 10 k's visibility with no cloud detected, so the sky state right now is plausible. So we'll come back to the flight itself in just a few moments' time. We'll now look at some various locations around the world and compare the default live weather versus the Weather Force injected weather. So the first location you can see is London Heathrow. On the left, of course, we have the default live weather, and on the right we have the REX 2020 weather. I took a shot in front of the windsock at all the locations just so that you can get a feel for the prevailing wind conditions. According to the METAR, the wind 330 degrees at 9 knots, and in all the shots that you'll subsequently be looking at will be facing due north. So as you can see, the wind roughly due north with the default weather. I would say looking at both windsocks we're looking at more around the 6 knot mark for the wind, but it's pretty much close enough. With the weather force version you can see the wind is coming slightly more from the northwest, probably closer to 330, and it's veering to around 270. So the wind in this particular example probably slightly more accurate with the Rex example. Visibility much the same in both cases. However, I do prefer the Rex visualization as far as the overall lighting conditions go. I believe this particular video was recorded around 9 AM in the morning, so you wouldn't be expecting to see things quite this dark, even with the overcast cloud. Cloud, as you can see, overcast at 2800 feet. Both examples do look nice and overcast, but once again I think the lighting slightly more realistic with Rex. Moving on now to John F. Kennedy, you can see the wind 180 at 6 knots. Once again we're looking due north in the shot. As you can see, the default weather is coming roughly from probably around 200 degrees, whereas the Rex weather is coming from around 280, somewhere like that. So actually in this case the default weather seems to be more accurate in terms of wind direction, and both windsocks showing roughly 6 knots of wind. Visibility more than 10 statute miles, again visibility looking good in both examples. There's a few clouds at 1400 feet, and then it's broken at 1900 feet and 5000 feet. Slightly more difficult to call in this case. I'd say both versions of the weather depicting the overcast layer quite nicely. My personal preference perhaps slightly more towards the Rex implementation again, and again I think the lighting is more accurate for this particular time of day. Next, coming across to Narita in Japan. The wind 350 at 4 knots. Once again we're facing due north. You can see the default weather coming from roughly 020, whereas the Rex weather is coming from closer to 350 and is varying around almost towards 270. But again in the forecast it is varying between 310 and 040. So in this particular example I'd say both weather simulations are fairly close. They're both varying around slightly. Maybe the Rex 2020 version just has the slight edge. However, coming to the visibility now, we have 5,000 meters in mist on the METAR. Neither weather depiction doing a particularly good job of showing that. However, I would say that the default weather probably slightly closer to the truth there. And then the clouds, few at 400, scattered at 600. And the default weather doing a significantly better job than the Rex version at displaying the overall cloud cover. Next we have Sydney, the wind 260 degrees at 6 knots. Both weather engines getting it totally wrong in this case, the wind coming from 090 degrees at roughly 6 knots. And even with that varying wind, yeah, the wind well off in both weather engines there. Visibility more than 10 kilometers, again both weather engines doing a perfectly decent job of showing that. And few clouds at 4,500 feet. Rex maybe just marginally better, but still not really depicting what I would describe as few in terms of cloud cover. So neither weather engine doing a particularly good job in this case. Finally I chose somewhere where I could actually find a current and active storm, so we're now at Zagreb. As you can see, the Rex weather much closer to real life than the default weather. The wind 060 degrees at 12 knots now. So actually the default weather much closer to the real world wind, the Rex weather pretty much 180 degrees off in terms of wind direction. Neither windsock really very accurately showing wind there. 8,000 meters visibility, clearly the Rex weather doing a much better job there. And heavy rain, obviously no contest, there's no storm whatsoever being depicted by the default live weather. Cloud scattered at 1,000 feet, broken at 4,000 feet. And again, the Rex weather clearly the big winner on this occasion. So overall, the Rex weather does have a slight edge, I would say, in terms of these particular side-by-side comparisons. However, both weather injection methods getting certain things right and certain things wrong at different times. We'll now carry out a direct comparison side-by-side time-lapsed flight between Southampton and Charles de Gaulle, allowing us to see how each weather engine handles transitions and the smoothing of the overall weather systems. Both flights were carried out using AI control to make the comparison as fair as possible. The AI of course should fly the exact same profile on both flights, so this should allow us to see any significant weather effects on the aircraft.
Good day, Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, descending 80 inbound normal high speed.
Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, descend to altitude 3000 feet, QNH 1028 and stop down.
3000 feet, QNH 1028, back 4 Golf Tango. Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, start reducing the speed now.
Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, roger, no ATC restrictions.
Go 3 speed, 4 Golf Tango.
Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, cleared direct lap mode, cleared RLS approach 192 45.
Direct lap mode, cleared RLS 28, welcome. 4 Golf. Approach with a Ryanair, expecting 30, sending 802 lap.
Ryanair 69, Quebec Victor, roger, continuous cleared, further descent in the left mode.
That's great, nice to meet you.
Ryanair 69, Quebec Victor, descend to altitude 3000 feet, QNH 1028, expect down.
3000 feet, QNH 1028, Ryanair.
Ryanair 4-1 Golf Tango, roger, number 1, contact tower 118.6, bye. 69, Quebec Victor, cleared ILS approach runway 28 with Warthog.
ILS 28, we'll clear back to February ground 99, expecting you.
So hopefully now that you've seen some side-by-side comparisons of the default weather versus the REX weather force injected weather, you can get a good feel for yourself as to where the various injection methods fall down or have their strengths. I think from the images I've shown you, it's quite clear that there is some benefit to REX weather force in terms of depicting the real-world weather more accurately within the simulator. However, it's still not perfect, and it does come at quite a heavy cost in terms of jarring transitions between various weather types en route. I think it is fair to point out that the jarring transitions are not particularly REX's fault per se. Currently they're a little bit hamstrung with what they can achieve in the simulator. The lack of proper SDK means that global weather injection is the only option currently. But I must admit, I was still quite surprised just how much pop-in there was during the flight from Southampton to Paris. Moving forward, I would like to see some significant improvement on the UI from REX, as well as some further tweaking to the METAR interpolation and injection within the simulator. The purpose of this video is certainly not to slam REX. I've owned many REX products in the past. They've all been brilliant. I've used them for many years now. Unfortunately, I just feel that this product falls short of their usual high standards. Ultimately, I just want to give as objective a review as I possibly can in order to help you decide whether or not you think you might like to purchase the product. Once again guys, I do hope you found the video useful. If you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, please leave them down in the comments section below. But for now, thanks very much, and I'll see you all again soon.